Okay, I'm now ready in my project for putting on my new Ford Model A head, high compression head, the studs. So these bolts that are threaded on both ends are going to go into the top of the engine block. And I want to point out some things real quick. So those are these are the old studs I pulled out. They were not in good shape at all. I can maybe reuse a few of them, but really I just bought a whole new set. And so something to make you aware of on these. Let me zoom in a little bit. Make sure I can do this. Okay, you'll get a bunch of these the same length. The two long ones here are the ones that go where the water outlet neck goes out of the top of the head. I'll show you that later when I put it back together. There's one here that's a little different from the rest, and let me point out what that is. It's this one here, and if I compare it to two, so this one is a little bit longer, and if you also notice, it has a domed, let me see, the head on it has like a raised dome, a little more of a raised dome than the other studs that go into the top of the head into the block. And the reason is these go, this special one, it goes right by the distributor. There's a hole that holds the cable that goes to your distributor. And this is the bolt here in the top here that this is a little bit longer than the rest to hold a clip that holds that cable that connects to your distributor. With all of these, make sure what you do is take a test one. The wider threads go into the block. The thinner threads are where the nut goes on the top. You'll figure that out. Put some anti-seizing lubricant grease on here. So anti-seize lubricant. I'm not pitching Permatex, but they seem to have a good coverage where I live at automotive shops. You just put a little bit where the end that goes into the block. Just put enough to smear around there. You don't have to douse it, but just enough to cover the threads and everything as it screws in. Make sure you test all of the holes. So in the engine, in all of these, try a test one. Screw into all these. Make sure it goes down all the way. Use a wire brush if you have to clean it out, or something else, Q-tip, whatever you got to get crud out of there. Hopefully you don't have to chase these threads or retap them. That's beyond my skill for this project. If you do need that, hopefully you got a friend that can do that. You have to find an engine shop, but I think my threads, and from earlier video clips, just to be clear, my Model A does have retapped threads. There's one right there. You can see the really shiny threads there. It's not focusing very well. But hopefully you don't have to worry about the threads in your block. Anyway, that's what I'm doing next, and I'll pick up after that. Okay, this is putting the studs back into the Model A engine, getting ready to put the new head on. So you'll want to get some anti-seize lubricant, and this goes on the threads of the bolt. So get some gloves, put a little bit on your finger. Don't have to put a ton on there, but just enough to cover the threads. Wipe the excess off, and I will put this down into this hole here. Screw it in until it bottoms on the end. Later on you'll get a rag and clean up any excess here. I do want to point out some special studs on the Model A. Let me zoom out. These two long ones, these go in the front because this is where the water neck on top of the head is going to feed the radiator. So two long ones in the front. They're not centered, they're off. You know, you might think the water pump's in the middle of the head, but it's actually off on the driver's side. So these are the two. And This odd one here is where when you put the head on, there's an optional, before you put the nut on, there's a clip. There's this clip that can hold this ignition cable in. And I actually don't put the clip on my ignition cable, but if you wanted to, this is a little bit taller than the rest of these. And when you put things back together, what it'll do is it'll hold that clip down as this feeds into the distributor, which is right. My hands are covered in gook, but you know the distributor will go here. No, it's not a stock distributor, but this is where it'll connect right here into that hole here. Okay, anyway, I'm going to finish up on all these and then get ready to put the gasket on next. When you're putting on your gasket, at least with a copper gasket, you may find that some of the studs don't line up completely correct with the copper gasket. Because copper is metal, it's not very forgiving like graphite. So when you line it up, what I found in my Model A is as I slide it down, some of these studs don't line up exactly. Like these two needed some help. They're close, like maybe like a 1/16 of an inch. They're almost, I mean, they're not completely off, but a tip that was given to me, told to me that I've tried and it seems to be working is for the studs that are difficult, like they're not lined up, put a nut or I did a couple of nuts, put 2 nuts on the top, and then what you'll do next, of course it's over there. Let me come over here. Then what you'll do next is get and these heads are, these nuts are 11/16. So you actually want to get a long, like a spark plug socket, a long socket here that matches the nut size. And then you want to get an extension arm, like a ratchet extension arm here. And what I did ahead of time you can't see, but I marked the arrows. I marked the direction I want to push. And again, you don't want to snap off these studs, although these are chromolys, they're pretty strong. But you just want to slightly, you may have to do this a few times, but just some pressure just to move it. You just need to move it just a little bit. So you keep doing this, then put the gasket back on, and eventually these will line up. So this method seems to be working okay. We'll take a look at the next step once I get everything lined up. And here is the gasket, the copper gasket, completely flat on the block finally. So that previous method I showed you to, if any of these studs are a little off-centered and won't slide, allow the gasket to slide down, you just get that socket and extension arm on there and just slightly move them around, and eventually they all line up. I had to do it for 3 or 4 of them actually, but that looks real beautiful put together. So I have not put the copper sealant on there. There's a spray can you get. Where's the stuff here? Hold on. Bought some of this at the automotive store. You spray this copper gasket high temperature sealant on the front and back, so the top and bottom of the copper gasket. I'll take a video of that before you put it on. Okay, you've heard of a shade tree mechanic, right? Well, I'm under a tree in the shade doing this next part. So this is the Model A copper gasket. You want to hang it up somewhere where you can spray this copper coat gasket. You spray this to make it stick on both sides. So again, top and bottom. I'm not going to spray it now, not ready to put it on quite yet. But make sure you hang it someplace, like on a wire hanger, that you can easily get the front and back. And then when I spray it, I'm going to take it immediately and put it on the engine block and then put the head on top. So make sure you have everything cleaned and ready to go when you do this step. Okay, the head is placed on the block. It's not torqued down yet, but I want to show you. So Model A head is heavy, and even with these eye bolts here to help me carry it, which I highly recommend investing in a couple of these to move it around, I still couldn't. Here's what I had to do. I'll show you what I did. I had to actually, and I guess this only works if you got your hood off and your radiator off, but I had to climb in the Model A here, put my foot right here where this bottom fender is. I put the head on top, just lightly put it on top of these studs, and then I just slowly positioned it down by being directly overhead so I could see and align the bolts. Again, this may not work for everybody if you're not doing an extensive teardown, but that worked for me. Or you can get a friend, I guess. And then after that, I used a rubber mallet because there was a gap around here, so I went around and hammered all the areas. So now the head is on that gasket, but now I have to torque it next for the nuts. So. Oh, and don't forget your water neck too. Okay, I'm in the process of torquing down the nuts on the head. So didn't that look nice? That paint came out well. Shiny new nuts and studs. For this step, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need this is called a torque wrench. I'll explain that in a little second. And you're going to need to know the pattern. There's a pattern to even the pressure as you torque these nuts down. You can get this online, but here's a book also. I'll pitch this book. Every Model A owner should have it. It's called the Model A Ford Mechanic's Handbook. So I recommend you get this book. And okay, so torque wrench. What you do is there's a pattern like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so right now I'm currently on 9. I'm on 9. So the way this, for those of you that don't know, the way the torque wrench works is you basically you adjust. There's a adjusting screw down here. You loosen it. You line up the 0 with the pressure, the torque here. You can't see that, but it says 35, 45. I'm currently on 35, not quite at 45 yet. So what you do is you line up the 0 about where you want it, and if you need increments over that, you can do well, you have to look at the torque wrench, but you can go 1, 2, 3, 4. So you add 35 and 1 would be 36. 2 would be 37. Then you tighten it down here in the bottom. And the way this works is when you reach this pressure, so right now it's about like 40, between 35 and 40. I'll be quiet for a second. You'll hear it click. When it clicks, that means you've reached the pressure set on your torque wrench. So, did you hear that right there? When you hear that click, that means you stop. Don't keep torquing it past that. So that's the torque setting you have. So currently what I'm doing is I'm doing, oh sorry, I said earlier, 35, 40, 45, 55. I might go 50 then 55, but I read online to do at least 3 rounds. So first round do 35. You could do 45 then 55. I'm gonna put another one in there just to be, I got all the time here. I'm not going anywhere. So anyway, and then after stud 9, you go to stud 10, which would be, where's 10? 10's over here way in the corner. So what you do is you put that on there. Right there, so it clicked right there. So that's my setting. So you just do that on all the nuts. Okay, moving along, wrapping up putting the head back on the Model A. So the head is on. I put the oil return tube on. So there it is down there. You need gaskets for each end. If your old ones look worn out, go ahead and buy some new ones. And now I'm putting the manifold studs in. So let me show you here. Just like with the head, put them in finger tight. Make sure they're smooth and go down all the way. Then what you do is before you put them in for good, you use some of this anti-seize lubricant and you put some on the threads because this is going into the engine block and it has a chance to seize over time if it's in there a long time. Hopefully they stay in there a long time. So just spread some of that on there. Do this for all 4 manifold studs. That looks good enough. Head. And then I just trying to get in the camera. I have a habit of doing that. Let's see. Oh, by the way, I bought new studs. New studs are cheap. I recommend if your old ones are corroded or if the threads are stripped in any way, just buy a new set. They're pretty easy. All right, that's in there good. And I'll do that for all 4 of them. And then I'll put the exhaust and intake manifold on next. So with your new head on your Ford Model A, one thing you can do, this is optional, is you can buy a gauge, a pressure gauge, like this one, and you can buy this at any automotive store. They're easy to find, and you'll need an adapter. So most Model A part suppliers, this piece here goes into where your spark plug goes, and that's an adapter, and then you screw the end of the pressure gauge in there, the compression gauge. So this is it tests compression in cylinders, and then all you do is then you put it in here, and you really don't have to, like, I mean, you could wrench it down. I think if you just put it finger tight all the way, so that's tight. And what I'll do is I'll leave this here. Now, when you do compression tests on the Model A, a few things. One is make sure the car won't start. So none of my spark plugs are connected, but the main distributor wire here, you can disconnect that. I don't have the carburetor on, but if you have the carburetor on, make sure that your throttle is fully open. Don't choke or close your carburetor. You won't get an accurate reading. Now, I didn't do this at the beginning. I didn't videotape this part at the beginning, but I put together a chart, and it just basically shows cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this engine wasn't in the best shape when I started. These are low compression readings. I think the average stock Model A cylinder compression it's like 60 or something. It's higher than these. So I'm on cylinder 2. Before I replaced the head, it was at 51. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to crank the engine over and I'm going to zoom in. And you got to let it crank over a few times to get an accurate compression reading. So let me go do that real quick. And before my battery runs out, let's look at that. So that looks like 70, it's between, each one of these is 10, so it's like right on the, it's hard to see. Oh, sorry. Let me zoom out. It looks like it's about 70, 69, 70. So you can see going up from 51 to 69. That's a good, you know, it's not optimal. This engine is a bit tired. It has years on it, has miles on it. but what I'm getting from the high compression head is I'm going to be able to get some more power going up hills and touring, which is what I wanted to do originally. So I'm going to test the rest of the cylinders, but it looks like 1 and 2 so far. I am getting much higher readings on the compression in the cylinder than I had with the previous stock head. So I would say that barring these two having some kind of catastrophic failure when I put it together, which I doubt, chances are that my project is successful. Next step is to put the radiator on and run some coolant through it to make sure I'm not leaking through my gasket.